Mr. Singham, thanks very much indeed for being on the programme. Can I ask you whether you think the UK government should trust in the Americans to uphold this economic prosperity deal? I was looking at the text of it. It seems that either side can walk away from it at any point without giving the other side any notice.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think in terms of what the economic prosperity deal actually says, I think the way to look at it is it's essentially in two parts. I mean, one part is some what you might call down payment. So things that the US and the UK have agreed in exchange for a reduction of the immediate pain, which is the 25% tariff on steel and aluminium and the effectively 27.5% tariff on cars. So you've got the 100,000 car quota for the UK down to 10% tariff. We sold about 102,000 cars in the US last year, so it's around that kind of level. And a commitment also steel and aluminium tariffs going down to zero, provided that the production of those steel and aluminium, that steel and aluminium does not have China origin material in it. So there's some, and there's some other things, on beef, access both ways, increasing the amount of beef and that type of thing. But more importantly, I think it's a commitment to actually start the negotiation. So, the second part of it, beyond the down payment, is a commitment to negotiate on things that have been long-standing irritants between the US and the UK, the EU when we were in the EU. And those are things related to regulations, technical barriers to trade, standard setting and that type of thing. So I don't think you can really judge this until the rest of that negotiation has actually happened. My view of this is it's a good start. It certainly solves the immediate pain that the UK economy was under as a result of this. But you'll have to wait until the rest of the negotiation unfolds in order to sort of judge it, properly on what it's able to achieve.
But Shanker, given that there is so much still to be negotiated, why the headlong rush to unveil this agreement last week?
Yeah, no, it's obviously the way the Trump administration is doing things is very unusual, and it is not the normal way that trade negotiations are concluded. I mean, this whole idea of a sort of down payment where these things are agreed in order to remove some of the tariffs is really without precedent. But I think from a UK perspective, the most immediate thing was to stop the bleeding. And the bleeding was being caused by the high tariff on cars and steel and aluminium. And I think they've achieved that, at least. But, we still have a 10% tariff on other products. And that is a big hit to the UK economy. And I think the president is and has said that he's willing to negotiate even that 10%. But I think it will have to be a very good deal in order to make progress on that element.
But actually, the White House yesterday insisted there would be no negotiation on that 10% tariff. It is there to stay, according to the White House press secretary, who said she had just checked that out with the president personally.
Yeah, the president has said that he's willing to negotiate on the 10%. I think it's going to be very difficult to get that 10% moved, but I think with the right kind of deal, it is possible. Now, obviously, if the US comes to the UK and says, there's a 10% tariff, we want all these things from you, and we're not prepared to give you any break at all on the 10% tariff, that's not very much of an incentive to negotiate much of anything. So I suspect that won't hold. But I also equally suspect that it would have to be a very, very big deal, very, very good deal for that 10% to go down.
Shanker,
but I think it probably will.
Can I ask you also about the talks that are taking place this weekend between the Americans and Chinese officials over the whopping tariffs and the back and forth tit-for-tat trade war that exists between those two countries? Donald Trump, I think overnight, was musing that maybe 80% tariffs would be apposite for China. I mean, do you see any solution in sight, anything coming out of this weekend's talks that tangibly is going to begin the process of resolving that standoff?
I don't expect there will be much out of this weekend, but I think it's quite important that they are at least talking and that there at least is a channel that is open. I think from the US perspective, what they'll want to do is, now they've started the process of these economic prosperity deals, and a core part of these economic prosperity deals is what is your partner's approach to China's distortions. I mean, the administration is very, very focused on removing market distortions that damage competition. And China is obviously a big proponent of that. So what they'll want to do is they'll want to lock in a few other countries. So I think Japan, Korea, India, possibly Vietnam, Australia. These are the kinds of countries they'll want to advance significantly with. And then you have some allies in order to sort of confront China distortions. I think the Chinese already are experiencing, I think even before this happened, the Chinese were already starting to perhaps question their economic model, because the Chinese economy was not doing especially well. And obviously with this tariff, the overproduction in China caused by the distortions is having to be absorbed by domestic consumption. And you're seeing quite a lot of deflationary pressure in China now. So there's some pain there. And they have to be careful about trying to ship that excess consumption or excess production to other countries, because there could be a safeguarding duty, for example, in the European Union or the UK or other countries, if there's a flood of cheap China products into those countries. So I think what you'll probably see is a fairly long process led by these other group of like-minded countries to try to then bring China more into the realm of reducing its distortions and reducing the effects of overproduction in a number of different sectors.
But that lengthy process, of course, certainly means the possibility of a supply chain crisis in America.
Yeah, no, I mean, there is no doubt a big effect of all of these. I mean, any massive dislocation, massive realignment like this is obviously going to cause significant supply chain disruptions, supply chain problems, and that is I think that is inevitable. I think the administration's view, if you talk to Jameson Greer, for example, the US trade rep, I mean, their view would be, look, we've spent 30 years trying to reduce these distortions. Look at the book the president waved around, the National Trade Estimate. You've had no progress on any of these issues. We could continue doing what we've been doing and nothing will change. We can have this major realignment, but clearly it will come with a cost. And the question for the administration is, how long can they survive? On this kind of policy approach, with major disruption going on in the world, with the effect this will have on markets, and that will be the thing that may weaken the president's negotiating hand.
Absolutely, could be a lean Christmas. Shanker Singham, thank you very much indeed